Yeah, so Chris, if we can bring you in,
Yeah.
and if you want to, you okay to introduce yourself to
What I was going to do, I was going to do like about 20 slides in about 5 minutes, just to kind of like revamp everything. I've just got the massive winds just blown the door, so I'm just going to go and we reprop that for a second.
No worries, mate.
Right.
Whenever you're
And
ready.
then I'll do a screen share, and then I'll black through these slides, but some of them I'll touch on. That should come up. Is that shared now?
Yeah.
And view slideshow. Is that all good, everyone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Okay, so I'm Chris Hines. I got out of the sea about half an hour ago, having had my second surf of the day, although I've got a buggered up old hip, so it's not as good as it should be. But look at this lovely picture from the kind of 70s depicting that kind of natural environment. And it is an amazing planet that we all get to live on. And kind of Andy, again, one of these things that we talk about, I think there's a thing called the deal. We get to live on this amazing planet, and therefore we should give something back. And again, I looked into that, and this thing of referencing your past, you think, oh, that's a clever idea, but actually someone's done it far better. And this quote from Alice Walker, activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet. And she wrote The Color Purple. She's a race and women and environmental campaigner. And again, Andy mentioned earlier, looking back, I've got a book inside, 50 Key Thinkers on the Environment. Number one of those is Buddha. This, as you say, has been around a long time. But Surfers Against Sewage, we set out with a clear passion. And that was our aim, and we always held our aim in our hearts and our minds, and that was to be able to enjoy the coastal waters for the wonderful playground that it is. This is Porthtowan, also known as Porth Tampon back in its day. And everybody loves to go to the beach and enjoy the sea, but we had a problem. This was it. I quote Margaret Thatcher in 1989. She stated on BBC Nature, all sewage is treated for discharge. That was a downright lie. There were 400 million gallons of crude every single day from Brighton to Blackpool, Newquay to Newcastle. Literally what you flushed down the toilet went straight into the sea. This is Camborne's outfall, 2.5 million gallons a day of crude shit flowing up to Porthtowan. Dodgy haircut, although COVID's brought it back. But again, hypodermics and all these things being discharged into our coastal waters. And that wasn't a set-up shot. That was a lump of human feces with a panty liner around it. And interestingly there, one of the things that made the sewage visible was the introduction of plastic panty liners. And these blinking things, Andy used to live in a house just up from the beach with kind of some friends, Rich and the Sparkses and Ellie. And at one point, they took a little action. They started refusing to pay their water bills because these panty liners would literally come washing in on the beach and then dry and blow up the road into their garden. And that was the state of it. So they kind of allowed us, the plastic weirdly allowed us to see where the sewage was. But it's okay to whinge. You also have got to go out and find solutions. And we looked high and low. We found on the island of Jersey that they had UV disinfection. It was £9 million cheaper to do the right thing than build a long sea outfall. And often people will say, oh, yeah, but to do the right thing environmentally is more expensive. It's not always. And especially if we do it en masse. And so anyway, I went up to the Houses of Parliament. I gave evidence in front of House of Lords Select Committee. They asked me how confident I'd be in Jersey's outfall technology. And I said, based on the bacterial count, I'd feel 50 times safer sticking my head up Jersey's outfall pipe than I would bathing on a government-passed beach. The island of Jersey heard I'd said this, so I went out to Jersey. This is their outfall pipe. And about an hour before this picture was taken, the water was up around that pipe. We had Sky, BBC, ITV News, and Reuters there. And I jumped off the end and turned around, paddled as hard as I could, and I duck dive into the mouth of 100,000 people's sewage before I was blown back out with the force. But we found our solution, and it was cleaner, and it was the right thing to do. We opened sewage treatment works for water companies who did the right thing again. And that was kind of using those kind of powers. Once we could break that monopoly of those water companies, it allowed us to put massive pressure on the other ones. And Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water were the first ones to change. we used the Houses of Parliament. Within 10 months of forming, we were at the Houses of Parliament, and this is the first time we ever met Andy. Andy was turning up and taking these shots, and we said, we'll meet you there. And that was how we first actually physically met each other. But we can, again, in this country, we can do this. We have the right to do this. And these places are actually ours. We can tell the stories. And especially now, we're kind of cowed into thinking that we don't have the right to go there, but there are places. We use this type of strong imagery. And again, this is the creativity, gas mask wetsuits, the 10-foot inflatable turd, that gets you the front page of the Guardian. That gets you up the media. And if you go up the media agenda, you go up the public agenda. And if you go up the public agenda, you go up the political agenda. One of our members even helped write scripts for BBC Casualty, and we did one called Waving But Not Drowning. They weren't able to say SAS, but they were allowed to buy £2,000 worth of our kit. So you imagine being the boss of a water company or the minister, and seeing our story and our message there. And that's creating a lot of pressure. We use the law courts. This is 2 women, and we judicially reviewed our local council and set case precedent for the whole of the UK. We bought shares in all the water companies, and we briefed the president of the European Parliament. And eventually, after about 7-8 years of hard campaigning, the government ruled that all sewage should receive at least secondary treatment with UV disinfection for 14 out of the 20 million people discharging into our coastal waters. So we actually did win, but it was this multifaceted thing, changing the whole dynamic. And, imagery and telling the right story and creating a view of the world where we could go and bathe, we could go and surf without all of this stuff, literally panty liners getting stuck in our heads. I went here to the Eden Project, and again, looked at how we all live in the planet. We all have an impact from the day we're born to the day we get in the coffin. Sustainability about minimizing the negative impact, maximizing our output. Have to say something about this. These are the people who rule the world. Very few women there, mostly one color. This is the people who inhabit the world. And when our institutions are truly representative of the people who live here, and all institutions, that's kind of government, police, everything, companies, how everything's run, truly representative, then we will see positive change. You've had something about that today, but this balance, not just running profit, but also taking into account people and the planet. This is that classic throwaway society, outside our local bar down at the beach. Someone literally reversed their car up and dumped all this stuff next to the bin. And I went over and said, what are you doing? Well, we've been on holiday for 2 weeks. We don't need this stuff. We have to change that culture. And it's coming in every year. All this stuff arrives in containers from, China, and we consume it. And like Andy's saying, that's our footprint. We know that, the top 5 issues hitting us in terms of global risks are around the environment. And, the UN, the world is in notice that 1 million species face extinction. But we're still arrogant enough to think that we're not one of those species. And it triggers war. The Syrian war was triggered, but partly by climate change. And that triggers, mass migration. And we only just started to see the initial, elements of this. This is only going to get worse. And we need to kind of be aware of this and the political instability that brings. But positively, of course, we can create the world. Wind farms. And look at this little one. You can take a bit of, this is a bit of research done by University of Bristol. You can lock up a little tiny bit of the radioactive waste, and it can drive batteries for thousands of years. Turn all the lights off, carbon footprint, read good books, use the power in our pockets. Another great book, this is set off in the future, and it's about that world that we made. And, the last slide, I think use every tool. And I think maybe this is what we discuss now. All these tools are used to sell us a bad version of the world. We can use all of those tools in a better way to sell the world, our version of it, where people can live in, harmony with each other and the planet. That's my one done. So let's go with a discussion. Can I just say as well, happy birthday, Andy.
Cheers. I'm on the water.
I've got beer. Happy birthday, Andy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I've just got boring old water.
Oh, Andy, what are you doing? Where's the cocktails?
Oh, I'm going to a barbecue later
Good.
Good.
before it rains. Hey, Chris, I just wanted to mention you were talking about the stuff from China.
Yeah.
Without dissing China, you see, I had the news on the other day, and this goes to the heart of everything we're talking about. Radio 4 on the news, and the line went something like this: the world's largest container ship just arrived in Britain last week. It was 200 feet wide by however long it was. Now, the context of him mentioning it was saying how fantastic it was because we were opening up because of COVID.
Right.
So the whole conversation wasn't about, fuck, we've got the world's largest container ships arriving in Britain with all this shit. That wasn't the conversation. The conversation was, wow, isn't it fantastic news? And my heart sank and I thought, there we go. That is the news story. The news story was, we've just taken the world's largest fucking, you can imagine what it's full of. It might be full of, PPE. It might be full of great stuff that we need, but I guess it's probably full of a lot of shit we don't need.
Yeah.
And they were proud of it. That made national news.
And I guess a thing that I was thinking, you mentioned how our industry has faded, but the true cost of shipping all of this stuff across, we could have, we suffered through this COVID thing about not having our own industry, not having our own manufacturing capability. And, if ever there was an environmental kind of crime and a great loss, it was the fact that we, of all of Europe, we've got the best wind, except for Ireland. We've got the best wind in terms of the strength of it. And we've got amazing engineering heritage. We tend to use it to make weapons, like, turbines for jet airplanes, but we could make the best wind turbines, but we almost had no wind industry. And I think it's like down to how we reposition, and hopefully our society now and the business leaders will also understand some of this. I did have a question for you, because I think as well you were saying around this kind of about where you go and how you use art and that interaction with nature. And I think that's one of the big challenges for us, is how we interact more. And I just wanted to ask you, 2 minutes, tell us about the bear on the Aleutian Islands. Because Andy won't say this, but Andy's one of, Andy is internationally recognized and was sponsored to go, chosen as one of 4 or 5 artists globally to go to the Aleutian Islands to photograph and work work with plastic pollution. So I want you to tell them about the bears.
Well, the funny thing is I won't bore you the whole time. I was in Alaska. I was on this beach. Now we were on this beach, like, was no middle of nowhere, right? So the reality is, if something goes wrong, it's going to take 3 days. Well, actually, you could be there for a week. We had to sign all this stuff about the Navy SEALs coming to rescue you and all this kind of stuff. And we've been taught about bears, and I was thinking, but there's quite a few of us. It's all going to be fine. And I was pretty anxious. And I was on this beach, and we'd been collecting stuff, and I was walking on this beach. And I was with this sort of ranger. I think she's called Alicia. She's tiny. She was tiny. And we were chatting, and I saw this bear walking towards us. And she said, "Oh, let's just sit down." And we sat down in this little, it was beautiful. By the way, it was Alaska. There's no clouds in the sky, and I was in shorts, right? So, and it was the first time Alaska had ever been photographed by NASA, clear with no cloud cover. Wow. So it was like, that's global warming for you. So I sat down, and this male grizzly bear probably got about a couple 100 yards away, and it was had a little bit foam of its mouth, and it kind of looked at us, and it just kind of looked at me for about a minute, and then it wandered off, and I thought, thank God for that. That was an amazing experience. My heart was pounding like this. But about 40 minutes later, we saw another grizzly bear, this time with 3 cubs, and she was probably a couple of miles away. And it was just like some kind of, David Attenborough does Alaska. And they were wandering along, and we could see this male bear following from a distance, and we could see this female bear with 3 cubs. Anyway, she was wandering along, and she kind of turned, and she got a little bit close, and she started to head towards us. And I was thinking, you know, there's no way that bear's going to come that close. It got closer and closer. And I'm not making this up. It's no more than, you know, this 2 meter distance thing, 3 meters, probably 4 meters maximum. And she sat down this sedge field, and she was absolutely enormous. The head was just enormous. She was so close, I could see all the flies. I could see all the hair was all bleached because of the sun. And these little cubs were playing on her back. And she sat there, not for like a few minutes, she sat there for half an hour, just chewing the grass. Yeah. And I was absolutely shitting myself. And there's a guy behind me, the film crew, and then the film crew, I heard one of the film crew guys say, Josh, change the battery. The batteries last about 30 minutes. So my vision was like that, because I thought at any moment she could have just swiped us. The interesting thing about it is, earlier that day, they decided they were doing a beach clean. Now, I'm not anti-beach cleaning, but that wasn't my intention to go beach cleaning. And then this friend of mine said, she burst into tears after the bear wandered off, and she said to me, do you know what? She said, don't you think that was meant to be? That's what it means. She said, well, that is such a rare experience. And one of the guides said that in 20 years of being a guide, he's never, ever, ever seen a grizzly bear sit with 3 cubs so close to human beings in the natural environment. So your brain kind of goes and thinks, you know what?
So I have a question.
Message.
So I have a question. Do you think she wanted to be able to turn around and go and say, can you tell everybody to clear up this plastic shit off our beaches? Do you think what she was there for?
Well, I mean, we found stuff that was, you know, like we're talking not like 5 litre, you know, like 10, 20, 40 litre gallons.
This is as far from civilization as you can get.
Yeah. I mean, it was knee deep in some places. The trash was knee deep, you know, and the tragedy was we found like shoes from Japan, because it was a couple of years after the tsunami. So again, we had a lot of this discussion about the way that sea and nature kind of regurgitates this stuff. And I think it's back to that thing about nature is, you know, nature's not separate. We all think nature's out there and we're here. Well, we are obviously, you know, we are one. And I you know, it's like I was thinking about asking Chris about this idea of travel. You know, I was very privileged to go there with, you know, a scientific expedition. You know, it was all laid on. Everything was, you know, you didn't have to worry. There's a guy there with a gun. You know, the whole thing. It was an absolute privilege. You know, most people are never going to experience that. But we now live in this culture. We're all kind of encouraged to try and have that experience with nature by, I mean, surfers are probably, there's this idea surfers are all eco warriors. Well, some are, but that's not really necessary. You know, if you think, I can know some surfers, the amount of miles they do is just phenomenal. Yeah. And they're all searching for this experience in nature. And again, that's what comes back to the conversation, isn't it? Like, we can't all have everything that everyone else has. And when you're in nature and you see that, you wake up to it. Well, you can't give that everyone that experience, but I know it changed me.
So I think there, for me, there's a reflection on how important it is to appreciate what we do have. And I did a workshop in a sixth forms with a whole load of sixth form students down in St Albans, on the edge of London, kind of back just before in February. And I set them this little task of running a mini campaign. So, like I said, you've got like 15 minutes to come up. You choose a subject that you're concerned about, and then come up with a song and a strap line. And you can have any celebrity you want from anywhere, whether they're alive or dead or a scientist or whatever. And these 4 girls from St Albans School came up with this campaign called Love Yours. And what they were saying was that, you know, your phone or your car or whatever it is that you have, love it. Yeah. Appreciate what it is and don't get suckered into that all those tools that tell us that if we don't have the brand new one, we're somehow defunct. You know, we're somehow a lesser person. because chasing all that stuff doesn't actually make you happy. There's an I think there's a statistic that when people watch, you know, like when we have those big sporting events like the World Cup or the Olympics, everybody goes and buys a whopping great brand new television, and it's like huge. By the time they're even halfway through the tournament, the novelty is worn off. Their happiness rating with the product they've just bought has gone back down, and then they're faced with a bill. But what happens is that we're suckered the next time around. They go, your TV's no good.
Yeah.
You're unhappy unless you buy a new one. So I thought the girls with their love yours, you know, and be happy with it and be, you know, take care of it and things. There's a brilliant thing, you know, BBC series about the repair shop where they get into repairing, and it's great. Yeah. Anybody else got Bob?
Yeah. So I was just gonna. I mean, we could chat about these things all day, I think. But we've got a load of. We should have just set up a live stream just for you guys. I think it's
okay.
Amazing to have you on board.
But we'll come next year as well. Andy and I are going to be in the park.
Back to Yorkshire. Well, not Yorkshire, but near.
Yeah, it's near enough. Yeah. Definitely carry on this conversation in real life as well. But there's loads of questions that have come in, but we also had one. I mean, you both talked about the sort of ups and downs of kind of you know, your own journeys and stuff. And so I was really wondering what kept you going. You know, I mean, Chris, you were talking about like 7 or 8 years before you won. You know, there was that like kind of. So what kept you going all those times?
So I think it's a lifelong thing, and I think you know at one point I'm completely open about things like mental health, and I think, you know, anybody who campaigns in this area, anybody who does this work, anybody who gives something, you are a bit vulnerable because you're giving a lot. I also think that so you know, I've reached a point where I couldn't even walk down a street. I had burnout. And what I did was I went back and I grounded myself. I did hang on to trees and watch water running down them. I did go to the beach and regenerate myself. And I think kind of understanding and loving each other and, you know, connecting with people, getting that support and giving each other support. You know, we live in this crazy world where people like the Kardashians are put up as VIPs. All the people watching this today are VIPs. You know, way more important you are, you know, for doing this. When when we go upstairs, you know, whatever he or she looks like, and they're at the gate, they're going to go, yeah, you lot, come on in. And then when the breadheads get up there, they're going to go, whoa, no, feel the toaster. And they, you know, but we have that thought that it's the other way around. So VIPs are, you know, normal people who give something, who care, and we need to look after each other, but also at times, you know, understand our value. Andy's terrible at it. I have to say to Andy, you know, charge the money, Andy. They'll pay you. You know, they'll pay you good money to go and talk. And, you know, we don't mind doing this because you're of a similar mindset to us. Yeah. So for us, this is cool. But yeah, there are ups and downs. And at times you just go, oh God, I've got to go to the beach. Andy, what do you do?
Well, I think it's funny. I was just thinking, I mean, I had dogs, didn't I, for years? And I was going to say about the dogs. I actually think that, you know, I think that thing about what keeps you going is, I think that, you know, like we said earlier, we do share.
Maui. We should shout out Maui.
We do share, you know, the whole world's for sharing, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So I you know, so, you know, like with animals, I'm for myself, I just find, I mean, I haven't got my dogs in, and I really miss that kind of the walking thing. Just the walking, being outside, and you have to walk, because whatever happens when you walk, it releases something in your brain, and it releases something. And do you know what? I have my best ideas after being walking for about an hour. Yeah. So there's something going on that after you've been walking, suddenly it releases something. I think you need support of your friends, you know, and wider. I mean, like, you know, we'd say, you have to be straight.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be straight. So when you are like feeling negative or down, or you can't quite function, then this, like Chris was saying here, the whole thing about mental health issues. I mean, it's a time, but it's just it's much more discussed now. But I think there's actually, I forgot what it is now. You know, there's actually a word for it. So the Oxford English Language Dictionary, where I've come up with now like a word, I forget what it is, which is about the kind of anxiety to do with the climate change.
Yeah.
And everything. I think we underestimate. We all have to support one another, you know. And I think I've had a lot of support.
Yeah, and another thing I think as well is to maintain that silliness a little bit as well, you know, and to be proud of that, you know, the world, because it is about art, it is about communications, it is about passion. And, you know, we live in a world where sometimes those things are frowned on. I've been having this big discussion with a company recently, and oh my God, you know, like it's all gone wrong. And it's because people have tried to snuff out the very joy that was the trigger for the whole organization in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's that joy of living here, that it should be infectious. And that telling and creating the picture of our version of the world as a better version than this crap thing. And that's, you know, I mean, we used to have a brilliant party every year. We used to have the SAS Ball, which was, you know, like 4,000 or 5,000 people in a marquee dancing all night, you know, with bands like Faithless playing for, you know, no fee. And it was a celebration. We didn't do that to raise money. We did raise some money, but initially it was a celebration of what we'd achieved every year and a thank you to all of our members, you know, which is why, you know, you guys have got music going on in another part of the festival. And that's how we do it, so that we can dip in and go and have fun and eat good food, and, you know, everything's all interlinked. And that's versions of our world. And we just need to spread that so that our world becomes the predominant one.
Yeah, exactly.
And welcome, keep those doors open and welcome other people in and go, yeah, McDonald's is shit. Taste this. Listen to this music. This is really good.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me started about McDonald's.
Hey,
I tell you what, since COVID's now supposedly been relaxed, the amount of extra McDonald's I'm seeing along the highways in Cornwall is increased, and plastic gloves and COVID masks.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you know, I think the COVID thing is a concern, and it will be a concern for a long time. People can talk about it for hours, but there is a lot of great things come from that. You know, I've found I'm cycling more. I haven't been in a supermarket for 3 months. So, you know, well, I think I might have gone in once, but, you know, basically we're getting all the stuff from a farm nearby. So, and they reckon that when you change your behavior, if you can do it for about 3 months, you're pretty much over it. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are going to find that over the last few months. Yeah. A lot of tragedy, but I think a lot of people are thinking, do you know what? I'm not traveling as much. I've saved some money. I know people are like losing employment, but we're all trying to find new ways of doing things that doesn't keep us on that bloody wheel doing that, churning around like mics on a wheel.
And not learning from the past and not learning. Yeah. And, you know, and the whole Black Lives Matter thing is absolutely like that. You know, we can't let this opportunity go. We can't let the COVID opportunity go, and we can't let this moment of complete global awareness of you know, Black Lives Matter. We have to change these things, and we have to believe in the world where that is true. That's our world. One, you know, one world, one people, and all of that. How are we doing for time, guys?
We're just about time, I think. But I mean, you kind of touched on. There's been a few questions come up, but I mean, you've touched on things that will hopefully be useful for the answers in those questions as well. And we did want to ask you about what your vision of My Future Planet would be as well. But I think, I don't know, have you got any sort of 1 or 2 words or one line, My Future Planet kind of thoughts or anything like that before we go? Mine would be, you know, one planet, one people.
I like that thing about that poem guy, you know, what it says, living together in mutually programming harmony. How's that?
That's great. Happy birthday, Andy.
Cheers,
Andy.
Take it easy.
And can you get us Faithless for the main stage then?
Ask. Yeah.
Yeah, just ask.
That's all we did.
Yeah. No, thank you so much.
Oh, that's
you two.
great.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
appreciate you joining along
thank you.
for
Yeah, it's cool.
INvirolution this year. Nice one.
Right, take it easy. I'm off to the beach.
Good.
My beach barbecue.
I've got to cook for Katie.
Before the rain. It's due to piss it down at 9 o'clock. I'm trying to get out before the rain comes.
Good.
Best of luck with that, Andy. All right, take care, you two. All the best. Thanks again. Well, that was delightful. So we had Chris Hines there, from one of the founders of Surfers Against Sewage, and Andy Hughes, who has been a photographer for the last 30 years, doing photographing plastic waste. One of the first really to photograph plastic waste that was turning up on the beaches. And so it's a real pleasure, real honor to have them along for INvirolution. And yeah, sharing some real anecdotes. We're going to put the recording of all of these discussions up on our website when we've got all the recordings. And so we might have to put a little caveat on that one, just for a little bit of language here and there. But they're obviously very passionate about this subject, as we all are. But yeah, they've definitely got a lot of wisdom to share with us as well.